to what you would imagine the list looking like. It's pretty much stock from Theros with 4 Bile Blades.
Yeah.
No fuss, no fuss.
It's just all 4 of us all the time. And he's playing against Matthew Firek, who's playing Mono Blue Devotions. Here's a Thoughtseize. You see a Rapid Hybridization, a Thassa, a Master Wave, a Judge's Familiar, 2 Islands, and a Mutavault. We're playing some old school Magic right here. That's what's happening. As Chung did mulligan to 5 this game.
And mulligans are really tough on Mono Black Devotion. They do a lot of trading 1-for-1 and lean on Underworld connections to make it all up, or to have high impact cards like Desecration Demon, but really hard to play that game plan on 5 cards.
So see, Thassa is going to resolve here. I think Thassa is the easy choice. It's definitely the best card in Firek's hand. Master Waves is obviously very good, but it's not very potent in this matchup.
Yeah, Mono Black Devotion with a lot of tools to answer Master Waves, but Thassa is almost impossible to remove from play and incredibly powerful.
Firek with the Judge's Familiar on turn 1. That Chung did know about it. He just passed the turn back. Chung draws a card for the turn. I think he drew another copy of Thoughtseize. And he's going to cast that right now in the face of a Judge's Familiar that could sacrifice. You don't see this happen that often.
Well, Judge's Familiar is actually pretty good against Mono Black Devotion. They have a lot of expensive spells, especially Hero's Downfall. The question here now is, are any of the cards in Firek's hand good enough that he really wants to preserve it? You know, he has a Rapid Hybridization that's pretty anemic against an opponent on 5 cards who's playing Mono Black Devotion. You have a Master of Waves that, you know, may not really amount to much because of all the removal. Firek does determine that it's worth fighting over, but it's close there.
That might be an exchange that Chung is very happy with, too, as Firek's just going to play Mutavault and pass the turn back here. So Chung, still looking for a second land, does find one. So here's a Swamp, pass the turn back. Again, Chung on a mulligan to 5 this game. Firek was able to keep his 7, but Thoughtseizes are making things a little bit more difficult here. Interested to see if maybe we see a Mutavault get fired up this go around.
And I feel like it's very hard for Mono Blue Devotion to win the matchup without one of its high impact cards.
Of course.
Like Thassa, Bident, Jace, something along those lines. Mono Black Devotion can fend off this kind of stuff all day long.
Oh, there's a Bile Blight to play the role Stone Rain, but Rapid Hybridization will take care of this. So an exchange of resources that may be favorable there for Chung.
Well, I think Firek is happy making these kind of exchanges with Chung on 5 cards.
Sure.
Maybe if we were both looking at 7 card hands, it'd be a little bit different.
See, Chung standing around. He's got a Devour Flesh and a Mystery card hanging out over there. So we're going to see our, I believe, Frog Lizard come in. It's been a minute since I've had Rapid Hybridization show up. But once that 3/3 comes into play, that's going to be Firek's turn. And I believe he does have quite a few lands in his hand. So he's okay with this Stone Rain interactions taking place, it seems.
We've spoken about this a little bit on the broadcast, you know, Mono Blue Devotion versus Do You Splash White. I think Rapid Hybridization is so good in this deck that I believe it's worth staying Mono Blue for this card alone. As usually if you're adding Detention Sphere to the deck, it necessitates removing copies of Rapid Hybridization.
Another copy of Bile Blight drawn here for Chung. Just going to pass the turn back. His Firek's going to draw a card. Looks like he may have just peeled off a Thassa. Here's an attack for 3. Looks like a removal spell. There's a Bile Blight.
And with Chung with no pressure and just removal spells in hand, this is about as good of a board for Thassa as it gets.
Yeah. So there's the God of the Sea, and that's going to be the one that may spell doom here for Chung. As it's not going to, you know, come firing in for 5 damage right away, but it'll ensure that Firek actually draws a good card every single turn and eventually get to him.
Yeah, it's not about this turn. It's about 3 or 4 turns down the line.
Does a really nice job of setting the stage. As you see, Firek is going to start this turn by scrying. He'll keep that card. Obviously happy with what he saw on top of his deck. There's an island. This is a Bident of Thassa. Now he's working his Devotion count up.
Yeah, and this is a great play by Firek here, as now any double blue spell threatens a lot. Turns on Thassa, he gets to draw a card potentially.
Firek taking a look at the top card of his deck. He's happy with it yet again. And we know he has Master of Waves. Not sure the other card. He has an island hiding out there as well, but he's got 3 cards. There's an island. Let's see what the Mono Blue Devotion player wants to do. Mono Blue Devotion sitting at 6-0. A little bit of a surprise here. All the different decks in the farm. We haven't seen Mono Blue dominate very much recently. I think this is going to be a Nightveil Spectre, and it is. We're going to see Mutavault get fired up as well. And now the combination of Bident and Thassa are going to start to take over this game.
Yeah, it's just puts so much pressure on Chung to answer everything the second it comes into play.
And being on a mulligan to 5 is obviously tough enough, but this is where things get really hairy.
Yeah, the proactive sources of card advantage are the most critical piece for Mono Blue in the matchup, and now Firek has all that he could really ask for.
You see Chung does have a copy of Devour Flesh, also has a Bile Blight, in his hand. But again, he can make some exchanges here, but none of them are great. That's the problem. He can Bile Blight Nightveil Spectre. Sure, that turns off Thassa, but Mutavault gets to get in, draw him a card. Things like that. It's just the exchanges are never going to be great here for Chung.
Yeah, and I think Chung was deliberating here. Do I take this hit? Do I Bile Blight something and then try to use the Edict next turn? But he just can't allow Firek to be drawing cards here. He needs to use his removal right now.
Devour Flesh is going to take care of the Mutavault. Firek will gain 2 life from that. But that means Thassa is going to be able to crash in, deal Chung 5. The Bident will trigger, drawing a card. And Firek will confidently pass the turn back as Chung will draw a card. It's a copy of Hero's Downfall. And all Chung can do is just pass the turn back yet again, as Firek is going to start his turn by scrying with Thassa. That card's going to go to the bottom, which means a mystery card is coming.
It's just so hard for Chung to keep Firek off of all of his tools at this point.
Yeah, this is part of the reason that Bident Thassa is so good in this deck, too. It's not a card that you can play a ton of because it's a legendary, but, when you do draw one, especially in this matchup, it plays a huge role. So he's going to come across with both creatures here. There's 3 mana. This is a Hero's Downfall targeting Nightveil Spectre. That'll get the job done. That'll also remove Thassa from combat because Devotion is not satisfied. But the follow-up obviously is a good one. It's a Master of Waves that Firek has had since the beginning of the game. You do your Devotion count. That's 4. So now 4 2/1 Elementals will come into play, and Firek can pass the turn back.
I believe that Firek had a Nightveil Spectre in his hand that he could have played as insurance before combat to make sure that Thassa remained with the Devotion count sufficient.
Yep.
But this is something that's changed now in the face of Bile Blight. It would have been really bad for Firek to run a second Nightveil Spectre out there.
Yeah,
so
that's
pretty
true.
heads-up play there. I understand the temptation of trying to ensure that Thassa gets to connect, but Firek's way more concerned about just keeping all of his individual pieces.
So it's time to scry yet again. And while Bile Blight can't take care of Master of Waves, and then obviously that takes care of the Elemental tokens, I'm in agreement with you that if you do play Nightveil Spectre, you get blown up pretty badly by a Bile Blight, especially when your opponent's on a mulligan to 5. You don't want to walk in any 2-for-1s that are work in their favor.
And you see, Firek again had Master of Waves in his hand that he drew this turn. Before Born of the Gods, the instinct there would be to play it before combat as insurance, but he's holding it off. He knows that Chung basically has to kill Master of Waves to have any shot of staying in this game. One of the ways that he has to kill it is Bile Blight, and so Firek is being appropriately conservative with how he's deploying his threats.
There's Bile Blight number 3, going to take care of Master Waves and the Elemental tokens, but because Nightveil Spectre came pre-combat, it means Thassa's still alive, which means it'll come across for 5, trigger the Bident, draw a card. Firek can pass the turn back after playing the Mutavault, and again, just really working away at Chung. He doesn't have to do it quickly because he's not underneath any pressure.
Yeah.
That's the big thing here, is that he can just take his time working down these resources because, again, he's not underneath any pressure from a Desecration Demon or an Nightveil Spectre or anything like that, and Chung will eventually succumb, which he does do. So Matthew Firek is going to win game number 1, Mono Blue Devotion up a game over Mono Black Devotion, off of the back of 1, a mulligan, but 2, Thassa and her Bident.
Yeah, and I think that Firek did a really good job of navigating that game. Of course, he had a huge edge with his opponent mulligan to 5, but he showed a lot of discipline playing around Bile Blight. Could have tried to leverage his resources much faster, but knew he had some inevitability there because of his Bident and because of Thassa, and had a card advantage edge already because of the mulligan, and just made sure he didn't get blown out by Bile Blight at any point. I think really heads up navigation of that game.
We'll take a look at the sideboards here. We're going to start with Matthew Chung on the left, as he's going to be on the play this game. 3 Lifebane Zombie, 3 Duress, 2 Erebos God of the Dead, 2 Dark Betrayal, 2 Drown in Sorrow, 2 Doomblade, and 1 copy of Devour Flesh. We see Lifebane Zombie coming in this matchup. Whenever I think of that card against Mono Blue Ocean, I think of Owen Turnwald boarding it in against Sam Pardee in the finals of Grand Prix Albuquerque. The fact that it just provides information and just a 3/1 unblockable creature is worth it. So you can see those coming in. 2 copies of Drown in Sorrow in this matchup. We're going to get to those in a second. Doomblade definitely going to come in. Devour Flesh, probably not. But how do you feel about Drown in Sorrow here?
Well, I like it, and it certainly, as a card, if you could have it in your deck in game 1, would do a lot of good work against Mono Blue Devotion. I believe because the Mono Blue Devotion deck post-board is often sending out some number of small creatures anyway to go longer with things like Bident and Jace, potentially even Aetherling, means it's much more poorly suited to the way the games play out post-board.
Okay.
It's most likely, Firek might be getting rid of things like, his Judge's Familiars and his Tidebinder Mages, in part because he wants higher impact cards, and also in part because Drown in Sorrow is something that's potentially on his radar. So, again, if you could magically have it appear in your deck game one, I think it would overall do good work, but less so in the post-board games.
Any chance you'd like to rest, or are you okay with just having 4 Thoughtseizes and going forward? Because they are going to board in a lot of spells to try to beat you.
Quite frankly, I'm not even sure how much I like the discard spells.
Okay.
I think that the Mono Blue Devotion deck is pretty redundant post-board in the things it's trying to do. It has a lot more chases. It has more Bidens if it wants, that sort of thing, and so on and so forth. So it's much harder to just attack the one critical piece with a discard spell. The 2-life definitely matters as they're beating you down. And they are dead draws later on in the game after the Mono Blue deck's deployed all of its relevant cards. So I know a lot of people leave in Thoughtseize. I've always felt that it's underperformed in this matchup, and I certainly wouldn't want to go to Duress as well.
Okay. How about on the Mono Blue side?
2 Jace, Archetype of Thought, 2 Aetherling, a Negate, a Dissolve, 4 Gainsay, a Curse of the Swine, 2 Domestications, a Claustrophobia, and a Sensory Deprivation. So I do like the extra Jaces. I think that Aetherling is also legitimate to bring in this matchup because the games are going to go pretty long. If Chung's executing his game plan, he's killing a lot of stuff and dragging the game out. I think the 1 copy of Dissolve is reasonable here. A lot of good 4 and 5 mana spells out of the Mono Blue Black Devotion deck. Nothing else I would really be in the market for. The Jaces, the Aetherlings, and the 1 Dissolve. Possibly the Negate as well, because the Mono Black Devotion deck has a lot of critical spells.
It's been a little while since I've actually seen this matchup in action, especially post-Born of the Gods. It's something that obviously we saw a lot pre-Born of the Gods, but it's been a minute since we've seen this, and oftentimes it felt like it would go 3 games, and Mono Black Devotion would oftentimes come out on top. Sometimes, it seems like one game they would win solely off of pack rat.
Yeah.
And then, they would figure out a way to win another game, but, one game they would kind of get browbeaten by a Biden and a Thassa and some other stuff. But at the end of the day, at the 3rd game, the Mono Black deck would win. They would move on with their lives.
Yeah, and this is the matchup that really warranted a lot of people moving away from a strict Mono Blue shell and adding white, because Detention Sphere is such a great answer. 2 Pack Rat, the Black Devotion deck can't really blow up a Detention Sphere outside of something like a sideboarded Ratchet Bomb or what have you. Pack Rat is by a mile their best card in the matchup, and so having a very good answer to it is really valuable for Mono Blue Devotion.
Well, Matthew Chung, he's going to try and start by keeping 7 cards. That's, I think, step number 1 here, as he had a mulligan of 5. And he's on the play this game against Firek, and he's going to keep. Firek will take a look here. Both these players sitting at 6-0. They're good to go, and we are underway in game number 2. Here's a Swamp, and passing it back. We'll see if Firek has something to do on his first turn. Just an island and passing back. So no Judges familiar with Cloudfin Raptor, as Chung does draw a copy of Underworld Connections, which is an interesting card in this matchup because the card drawing it provides is obviously pretty good, but when you're playing against an aggressive deck like Mono Blue Devotion, it's difficult to be able to take time to take that turn off.
Yeah, it is tough, but he's signing into a lot more 2-mana removal, so he'll probably get, at least on the play, an opportunity to play it on a fairly empty board. And because his deck is flushed with so much removal, you can play a game plan of just drawing 2 cards a turn, just having a bunch of removal spells and trying to win the game that way. Biden puts a lot of pressure on you to find a bunch of removal spells, because any threat that slips through the cracks now represents a huge upside for the Blue Devotion player.
Looks like a Tidebinder Mage in Firek's hand. He's considering casting it or maybe holding back with, his counter magic bluffing, who knows. But he's going to play the Tidebinder Mage and pass the turn back to Chung. We'll see if he has a removal spell.
Allowing the Black Devotion deck to curve efficiently with its removal spells is pretty bad here, but that Tidebinder Mage is certainly not getting any better, so might as well cast it. It's probably just going to die, but maybe it doesn't.
Fireflesh does take care of that. You see 2 copies of Neural Connections here in Chung's hand. He did draw a packer for the turn, but he will deploy the enchantment on his Swamp before passing the turn back. So Fire's going to draw a card. We'll see if we get a good look at his hand and figure out what maybe he wanted to wait for, but he's going to play his source of card advantage, or his card manipulation here in Thassa.
Yeah. A really powerful card quality tool.
Chung going to draw a card here, going to go down 19 to do so. I do not think he has a 4th land to play, but he did just draw 1, Temple of Deceit, and bonus, he gets to scry. Keeps the card on top very quickly, and can deploy a Pack Rat right now if he'd like, and he will.
And the previous turn, Chung had the opportunity to play Pack Rat instead of the Underworld Connections, and that gave, that was a turn off that allowed Firek to deploy Thassa. Were he to play Pack Rat, it's possible Thassa couldn't have been cast last turn.
Sure. And this is Domestication. That'll be taking a Pack Rat. Now, Thassa isn't on yet, but it's getting close now because Firek has a Devotion of 3. Chung's going to untap. He kept his card on top very quickly. It was a land.
And Domestication's a sweet card to bring in here because no matter what 3-drop the Black Devotion deck is playing, whether it's Lifebane Zombie or Nightveil Spectre, you can still just take it with domestication.
Yeah.
And spots like this where you get a lone pack rat in play is of course excellent too.
There's Bioblight, making it so that Firek has to use his own removal spell on basically his own creature in the pack rat. But he is killing the domestication, which slows down Thassa a little bit. Plays a replacement pack rat before passing the turn back over to Firek, who's going to scry now.
And he has to Bioblight now because he can't Bioblight that pack rat later once he has his own pack rat in play.
See Firek consulting his hand, seeing what he wants to do here with this. Chung at the ready to activate Underworld Connections on Firek's end step. But we got to get there first, and we'll see what it's going to take to get there. Looks like we're going to see a rapid hybridization take care of pack rat.
And like I said, this is the upside of adding white. Detention Sphere, of course, would be much better than giving Chung a free 3/3.
Yeah. Now there's a Claustrophobia. So Chung getting cards out of his hand, but he wants to make sure that Thassa can get closer to turning on, as Chung's going to activate this Underworld Connections.
I really like the angle that Firek's taking here. I haven't seen it out of a lot of Blue Devotion players, but signing in a lot of enchantments is a great way to produce a stable source of devotion because, of course, your creatures are all susceptible to being killed, but your enchantments are pretty stable.
It's time for a Thoughtseize. Let's see what Firek is working with here. He's got a lot of removal. 2 copies of Rapid Hybridizations and then a Bident, and yeah, that thing's got to go. And the big question here, Patrick, is was it worth it to cast Rapid Hybridization and take care of Pack Rat instead of dropping Bident down?
I think he has to. I mean, I don't think you can really afford to give Chung 2 3/3s if you're going to use 2 copies of Rapid Hybridization, nor can Firek allow Pack Rat to simply go unchecked because the Blue Devotion deck doesn't have much of an out to that.
Chung going to draw a card with Underworld Connections, goes down to 15. There's a Nightveil Spectre, pretty good draw there. Allows him to use all of his mana if he'd like to. It's a little bit risky to cast, though.
Yeah, he does know that domestication is a thing, and that would be a disaster if this Nightveil got stolen. So, give him some source of pause here. I think the upside of because he has a Temple of Deceit in play, it's big upside to play the Nightveil Spectre. But Chung, pretty far ahead in this game, erring on the side of caution, just not casting it.
Thassa's going to put the top card to the bottom, so Firek will take a draw. Again, we know he has 2 copies of Rapid Hybridization. He lost his Bind of Thassa last turn, so we'll see what he picked up, if anything. And it's not anything, so he's just going to pass the turn back. So let's see what Chung wants to do here.
I think Chung is being appropriately conservative.
Okay. He has Bioblight in his hand. He could have Bioblighted his own Frog Lizard token to get Claustrophobia off the board to move Firek that much farther away from Devotion. I think that's the play he considered, but he's not going to make just yet.
Yeah, he can do that whenever he wants to, so there's no big rush. And it's possible the game moves into a place where, you know, Firek ends up using a Rapid Hybridization on his own creature, and then you get to kill another frog that way, so good patience.
Firek just drew a land last turn. So the hand now is just the island and the Rapid Hybridization. Chung can definitely navigate this appropriately now that he knows what's up. He's going to play Nightveil Spectre and just pass the turn back. You see his hand for Chung. He does have 2 copies of Underworld Connections. They're not great in multiples. They do facilitate Grey Merchant, of course, but I think 1 is probably all that he's going to need, which he has online and has had for a while now.
Yeah, I'm sure he'll cast the second one when he has nothing else to do with his mana.
Yeah.
But there's no big rush to get the second one in play, so he's going to use his mana playing removal spells or casting creatures, and he'll throw it into play when he gets around to it, but there's no big rush.
Rapid Hybridization on Firek's end step. Going to take care of the Frog Lizard. It's time to scry. Going to go to the bottom. Take a draw. Looks like he actually cast that on his upkeep. Okay. It was going to be on his end turn. A little bit of missequencing there, but we're all good to go. And this is a Master of Waves. Devotion check is 4. 2 from Claustrophobia, 1 from Thassa, 1 from Master of Waves itself. So 4 2-1 elemental tokens will come into play.
I'm not an enormous fan of Master of Waves in this matchup. I just feel the odds that the Black Devotion deck has no answer to it is fairly low. It increases your exposure to a lot of different removal spells, especially now that Drown in Sorrow is a thing that your opponent could potentially be bringing.
Yeah, I was going to say with the introduction of Bioblight, I like it even less, but Drown in Sorrow is another reason to like it less.
Yeah.
And there is Bioblight to take care of Master of Waves right now. Now Chung can come across for 3, put Firek down to 19. It's going to be interesting to see if Firek can chase down what this Underworld Connections is doing in this game for Chung, because it's playing a huge role.
Yeah. This is the difference between scrying and drawing cards. It's just extra removal. There's not a lot that Firek can actually do with additional card quality because he's so light on total resources.
So after he does resolve the scry, now he's just playing with no cards in his hand and hoping the top of the deck will help him out. Obviously didn't help him out that turn. All he can do is pass the turn back here. So Chung's going to go down to 11. He'll draw a card. It's a swamp. But he's getting deeper into his deck as he draws a card for his turn. That is Devour Flesh. Nice little interaction here. He can target himself with Devour Flesh to get the Claustrophobia off the table to keep Firek even farther away from Devotion. As he does activate Underworld Connections in the main phase, draws a copy of Mutavault.
Yeah, all these removal spells are going to be very challenging for Firek to slug through.
It's going to be very difficult for him to overcome that, as you do see Chung going to attack here for 3, going to put Firek down to 16.
And you can really see the issue that Pack-Rat causes in the matchup. Even when Pack-Rat isn't involved in winning the game, it forces Firek to keep in so many copies of Rapid Hybridization to protect himself, and he needs a lot of threats to overwhelm Chung's removal. So even when Pack-Rat isn't winning the game, it's still participating in winning the game.
Yeah, it's just that you have to answer. And, as you mentioned, this is part of the reason that people play the other version of this deck with white for Detention Sphere. You see Frostborn where it's going to come down here. This is Devour Flesh. And you see Chung knows the interaction right away, I believe, of target myself and not you. We'll see. I want to obviously confirm. Yeah, and that's exactly what he's going to do. He says, target myself. I'm going to get 3 life. Thank you very much. Also, Claustrophobia is off the table, so you got to work even harder towards getting Devotion.
And 3 life is something that Chung is in the market for here. He's taking a lot of shots off his own Underworld Connections. He's falling a little on the low side, so
he's going to take another shot, go down to 12 here. Draw a copy of Grey Merchant. Well, that elevator is going to be going back up in a minute.
Right.
Chung takes a draw. It's a copy of Mutavault. Really, really, really like the way Matthew Chung has played this game.
Yeah, this has been very skillfully navigated. The one turn that he held up on casting the Night Veil Spectre, I don't know if it was necessarily motivated by the domestication he saw, but I think that was really good discipline. He had a big edge just from the Underworld Connections and being under no pressure, so no reason to risk something stupid happening.
Yeah.
And now he's just kind of figuring out how he's going to, pick the last few wings off of this fly here.
Yeah, just closing windows at this point. I mean, he's got a card drawing engine. He can obviously fire at Mutavault. He's got Grey Merchant. There's a lot of different things he can do. He can play Hero's Downfall right now, get rid of that Frostburn Weird, which he does do, which allows the Frog Lizard from Rapid Hybridization to come into the red zone. So, again, as you mentioned, just a lot of options. He's going to fire at Mutavault now, too, and come across here for 5. Going to put Firek down to 11. Could play Night Veil Spectre now if he wants to, or he can just leave up Underworld Connections to draw a couple of cards. It looks like he's going to go with this. Oh, he's going to go with the other connections, okay, and really set up for just a huge, huge Grey Merchant.
Yeah. I mean, Firek has to know about it now, essentially, at this point, as there's no way he would have cast another Underworld Connections in lieu of using his 2 in play if he wasn't trying to do something Devotion-related.
Asteroid is going to come down, going to put 2 tokens into play. His Devotion count, of course, is at 2, 1 from Thassa, 1 from the Master itself. Chung's going to untap all those lands. He'll take a draw. It's a Temple of Deceit. But for him, it feels like we're probably on the Fireball plan now.
I would imagine. He may want to look at some cards with Underworld Connections first.
Get some more information.
Well, if you find a removal spell for Master of Waste, that makes it really convenient.
Yeah.
Because then you get to attack with Mutavaults and then finish off the game for sure next turn with your Grey Merchant.
Well, you're going to start off with Temple of Deceit. Go scrying that way. Can influence his Underworld Connection activations. Looks like he kept that card on top. And now he's going to draw a card, so might be the rule spell that you mentioned. That's a Bio Blight.
Yeah. I like this, No reason to just slam the Grey Merchant into play when it's not lethal.
So there is Bio Blight. Get the Master and its waves out of here. In 4-3. Push down to 8. I think it conveniently has 5 mana available to cast a Grey Merchant for an 8-point Fireball.
Exactly enough mana and exactly enough Devotion.
That's weird.
Easy.
He must have gotten lucky.
Yeah, I got pretty lucky.
Matthew Chung going to win game number 2 as we work our way through round number 7 of our Standard Open. We'll be playing a third one here between Mono Blue and Mono Black Devotion. Kind of old school.
A throwback to a few months ago where these 2 decks were the thing that was going on.
Yes. Still think you can argue, man, Mono Blue, I guess it just hasn't really hasn't really been the thing to be doing. Mono Black's still perfectly fine. We see a lot more Orzhov mid-range, I think, than Mono Black Devotion nowadays, but obviously still the archetype is a winning one.
Yeah, and I actually think Mono Blue Devotion is poised for an uptick now that we're having all these successful burn strategies and Mono Red is making a comeback of sorts. The Mono Blue Devotion matchup is a nightmare for those two decks in my experience.
Yeah, I think Mono Blue Devotion is kind of the fun police for Mono Red.
Yeah, I mean, even setting aside just Master Waves, the structure of their deck, they're really good at blocking. You really don't have ways to remove Thassa once it's in play, unless you use Chain of the Rocks, in which case Thassa probably hit you once. It's tough to beat them.
You're also really good against Chandra's Phoenix, which I feel like a lot of decks aren't very good against right now. You know, you've got Nightveil Spectre, you've got Cloudfin Raptor, even Judge's Familiar just on chump blocking duty for a turn.
And Rapid Hybridization is extremely powerful, too.
Yeah.
You know, you have spots where you're trying to War Leader's Helix their guy. That's your entire turn. You need the life gain. It gets hit with Rapid Hybridization. You don't gain life. They have a 3/3 in play now. There's, you know, if you're playing a Mono Red beatdown deck, both 2-drops, Frostburn, Weird, and Tidebinder Mage are very good against you.
Yep.
Master of Waves is game over even with no other blue card in play a lot of the time. So I think Blue Devotion is a deck that's, I would imagine it's going to gain an uptick in popularity in the coming weeks. Might be a big player in the Invitational next weekend.
Yeah, I mean, I know that a lot of people who are playing in the Invitational, you know, you think of Brian Bronduin, Huey Jensen, some of the other players who are obviously going to be going there. Big fan of Esper right now, Brad Nelson too. But, you know, if that's the case, Mono Blue Devotion doesn't look so good. But if people are trying different things, moving in different directions, you got to really like where Mono Blue's positioned. And this could be a weekend where it kind of sets the stage for next weekend as far as Mono Blue's concerned.
I mean, Mono Blue Devotion did a lot of work to suppress other decks in the format prior to Born of the Gods being released.
That's true.
You know, it's hateful towards a lot of strategies.
Well, we know at least one player's doing well with it, and Matthew Firek. I know that Nathan Holiday, we obviously had him on camera a little bit earlier. We saw him win a pretty easy game. Saw him moving forward with the match slip after this round. So he had a draw. I think he might be sitting at XO1 territory still.
Sure. Could be looking at potentially several copies of Mono Blue Devotion in the top 8.
Do you like Mastering Waves?
I mean, I like it. It's a sweet design. I wish it wasn't so good against the decks I play, but that's okay. It's got to be something, you know?
As a red mage, what is your least favorite card to play against over the history? Probably Core Firewalker?
Yeah, well, I answer this question in two different ways. If we're actually looking at what's the most egregious hate card, you know, Core Firewalker is really high on the list. Chill is really high on the list. Circle Protection Red is quite high on the list. But I actually say that I'm more aggravated by playing against Kitchen Finks.
Okay.
Because I feel like when my opponent plays a Core Firewalker or a Chill, my reaction is, okay, this sucks and I lose, but this person wanted to win this matchup. They thought about this and they put these cards in their sideboard to win here.
Okay.
So good for them. You
Okay.
know, they're being rewarded. Kitchen Finks is just totally insane against any number of opponents, and it's a total freebie to put in your deck X4. And
Sure.
I lose that card all the time, you know? So I would say I'm actually far more frustrated by Kitchen Finks than any of the more explicitly anti-red hate cards.
Is there a anti-red hate card that you enjoyed playing against because you knew it was not good enough to beat you?
Burton Forge Tender.
I was actually going to say that.
Yeah, Burton.
That is insane. I was actually going to say that. Never, ever beat a red deck.
Yeah, it's fine or whatever, but if you think that you're winning the matchup before when you were losing, I got bad news.
Yeah. It's not going to get the job done, my friends.
Yeah.
See, both players look at their opening hand. We're underway in game number 3. We're going to start off with a Judge's Familiar here for Mr. Firek. Chung with a Swamp. Anything cool to do on turn 1? He's just going to pass it back.
Some removal spells and some Desecration Demons, which is a really good setup for Mono Black Devotion in the matchup, as a fast Desecration Demon is a little rough for Mono Blue.
But it looks like Firek has the 1-drop, 2-drop start. We'll see if he has a 3 as well. I believe I caught a Tidebinder Mage in his hand. He's going to get his life total ready there off of his pad of paper. But Chung is going to go down to 19. We'll see if Firek has a turn 2 play here.
It wouldn't surprise me if Firek sided into a slightly more aggressive build on the play, as Drown in Sorrow is much less of a concern when he's on the play versus on the draw.
I agree. Especially when you have Judge's Familiar to mess things up with the casting cost, having to pay 1 more.
But all of this is predicated on Firek finding one of his power cards, whether it's Thassa or Biden of Thassa. As good as this opening is curve-wise, I think that, you know, Chung can easily fend this off with just random Doomblades and such.
Here's an attack for 3. Going to put Chung down to 16, and Firek actually did draw Thassa for the turn, and he's going to deploy that. So 1, 2, 3, and happy to pass the turn back is he. as Chung has to draw. It's a Mutavault. Now, Chung does have a Doomblade in his hand, but he didn't want that to get countered by Judge's Familiar. So there is Mutavault.
I feel like you got to cast something there, though. He's so far behind on the board. He's getting out tempoed here. I don't think he can afford to pass. Even though it looks bad to have to Doomblade a Judge's Familiar, I would have cast something there.
Okay. Has Doomblade, and he also has Bile Blight in the grip. So if I'm going to take a look at the top card here, it's time to scry with Thassa. That card's going to the hand. Looks like a Cloudfin Raptor. Looks like he wants to work towards Devotion this turn.
Probably looking at multiple spells if he kept a Cloudfin Raptor.
Yeah, that's what it feels like to me, too. He's going to start by playing Cloudfin Raptor, which is going to turn on Thassa, obviously. Devotion is in check now. This is a Judgment. That's going to put Devotion up to 6. Raptor's going to evolve. It's going to make sure that Thassa's still alive. Things are getting ugly out here. So Judge's Familiar on the stack. Here's a Doomblade. This might be a Rapid.
Oh, no. What an opening here for Firek.
So Rapid's going to kill the Tidebinder Mage. That's going to come into play. Cloudfin Raptor's already in place, so that's going to evolve. So Judge's Familiar isn't going to evolve Cloudfin Raptor, but Judge's Familiar will make it so that there's 4 Devotion in play. We're not all the way there for Thassa.
But Chung is definitely way behind on the board at this point, and Firek has enough disposable creatures where Desecration Demon does very little work.
Yeah. See, Chung draws a Swamp for the turn. Does have Bile Blight, but unfortunately for him, will not get the job done against the 2 Judge's Familiar, for example, because you just sacrifice one of them, and then they won't be able to kill the other copy. So here's Desecration Demon, as you did mention. Firek immediately draws. This is going to be a Master Waves. That's the last card in his hand. Devotion is fulfilled now. You see him counting. It's going to be for 5, and now, as you mentioned, he can control the Desecration Demon.
Yeah, I mean, I felt like Firek had enough tools to control it before. He certainly has more than enough tools to control it now.
Yep. Cloudfin Raptor is going to evolve. You see Demon Trigger on the stack, sacrifice an Elemental. Come across here for 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. This is a good draw from Mono Blue Devotion.
You rarely see the Mono Blue Devotion deck win like this in post-board games
Yeah.
here, because it sets up for a much grindier game. But if you draw 1, 2, 3, the 3 being Thassa, and your opponent does nothing on 1 and nothing on 2, it's going to be good enough.
It looks like this game, it's going to be, as Firek has a beautiful board right now. Chung with just a Desecration Demon, which he cannot really use productively.
Yeah, I think the key against Mono Black Devotion is just you need to get out in front of the board fast.
Yeah.
Because it's not actually the most mana-efficient deck. It plans on exhausting your resources, but it regularly can only cast 1 spell a turn. And so when it passes through turns 1 and turns 2 without doing anything, sometimes it can't catch up with cards like Desecration Demon and Grey Merchant. You're seeing exactly that kind of game right now.
Yeah, those feel like, that has to feel like a win for you, especially when you're on the play, too. When you play a 1-drop, 2-drop, and your opponent doesn't do anything until turn 3, and their turn 3 is Doomblade my 2/2 Grizzly Bear, like, you just have to be thrilled.
Yeah, this is why I mentioned, I felt like Chung needed to do something on turn 2. He had Doomblade and Bile Blight, cast neither, and now it looks very likely that he's going to die with one of his removal spells in his hand.
Yeah. As you mentioned, don't be too proud.
Just do it on something.
Don't be too proud to take down Judge's Familiar. It's going to be a Bile Blight targeting Master of Waves. See if we're getting any responses here or anything of that nature.
And these Judges Familiars are going to cause a lot of contorting for Chung as well.
For sure. You see Firek's considering using one of these right now to maybe make him pay a little more, potentially 2 of them.
Yeah, because there's nothing the Mono Black Devotion deck can really do with 1 mana left over. And so you tap him out here, you know that you're almost in the clear to do whatever you want.
Yeah, and so he's going to do this again. It's a really good play by Firek.
Yeah.
Because it'd be very easy just to leave the Flyers in play. I'm so close to Devotion. All I need is 1 more blue, and I can attack and do these different things. But instead, he's really contorting the mana of Chung and making him make a very difficult decision.
Yeah, this is essentially leaving Chung dead on board, as the Raptor can be sacrificed to the Demon and the Frog Lizard can come across for lethal, even if Firek adds nothing to his board this turn.
So now that other Judge's Familiar is on the stack, I believe, and I think Chung is deciding if he wants to pay for it or not. Considering the ramifications of what happens if he does,
Yeah, Chung might actually have to let it go just to keep up appearances,
Yeah.
to make it seem like there's something he can do.
He's going to pay the 1. So Master Waves and the Elemental tokens are going to go bye-bye. And the tough thing here is he's already played land for the turn because last turn was Desecration Demon.
Right.
So this turn was land, play Bile Blight, pass. Now he has to pass back, maybe hope for a bit of a mistake here. This is time for Firek to scry.
Yeah, Chung didn't even leave up a swamp. He left up the Mutavault, so
Yep.
the coast is absolutely clear.
Firek is going to draw. He's going to play Claustrophobia.
Sure.
Yeah, that'll do it too. An attack with everybody. And that is it. Matthew Firek is going to go and do 7-0 with Mono Blue Devotion, defeating Matthew Chung, playing Mono Black Devotion. So, Mono Blue has been kind of off the map a little bit, but 7-0 right now.
And I think, like I said, with all the red decks that are kind of cropping back in, particularly the burn strategies, I think Mono Blue Devotion is really well suited as a metagame call.
I agree. I think, it's... You say it all the time. Metagames are ecosystems.
Yep.
And we are kind of rotating through one right now.
Right, and I am I'm not surprised, but I am very happy to see the Mono Blue build of the deck back as opposed to the Blue-White builds. Now, there could be some of those floating around the room as well, for all we know, but I really felt that people went a little bit off the deep end with the number of white cards they were adding and the number of comes into play tap lands and the removal of rapid hybridization all struck me as too aggressive of a response to Pack Rat and overvaluing Afara a little bit.
Okay.
And these Mono Blue lists are, you can see, much more efficient with their mana, much more streamlined, much more aggressive.
Yeah,